Okay, well, thank you very much, Mark, and it's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for inviting Dairy. I've only heard Dairy mentioned 2 or 3 times a day. I wanted to thank Dr. Taylor, and I might have missed somebody else, but I think it's 20% of the beef supply in the state. My first comment would be, when you talk about cow numbers in the state and the decline in the beef cows, Dairy feels your pain. We've been feeling the pain a lot longer. In 1975, we had 330,000 dairy cows in this state. 330,000. Today, the latest figure I've seen is 88,000 since 1975, and it's a trend line like that. And every cow that leaves the state, whichever way, if she's beyond her capacity of producing, she's in the meat supply. And if not, she's probably moved on to a larger dairy in another state and doubled her production capacity because she's being managed better, fed better, watered better, taken care of better. A number of reasons. But our production per cow really falls far behind where it should be. Part of that is we have had a movement to more grass-fed dairy in the state than beef. Part of it is just economics. We saw that in the drought year, 2012. If you ran out of feed, could you find feed? And if you could find feed, could you afford feed? And it had to come farther away. And for some of our folks, I think in 2012, we lost 100 dairies. I had a reporter in Jeff City who said, well, where'd they go? They were lost? Where'd they go? I said, they exited the business. And dairy, as most of you know, is not for the faint of heart. It's very labor intensive. And with dairy, once you're out, you're out. You don't jump back in it a year from now because things get better. You move on. In fact, personally, I believe most of the cow-calf people, I don't know how many are still left in here, from dairy, moved on to cow-calf. A lot less labor, feed them twice a day, walk away from them, give them maybe 1 shot a year with dairy. And Craig, the large animal vets, I've seen the impact, the loss of large animal vets in this state. You can go in southwest Missouri where a practice used to have 4, now they've got 1. It's the loss of not only dairy, but beef cows, large animals. And the veterinary side of it has felt that big time. And so, from 1 shot a year for beef cow versus dairy, if you've got a cow down, you might have the vet out there several times this week till we get her back up. She's our production. But the economic hit to this state has been catastrophic. In your packet is a little color graph if you want to grab that and pull that out if you haven't noticed it. The most recent data I've seen on the value of a dairy cow, and this was a study done by Iowa State University, and I see several supporters of that were the Iowa Area Development Group, Iowa Corn Growers, Iowa Farm Bureau, the Iowa State Dairy Association, and Midwest Dairy Association, which is the promotion arm for dairy. But this graph shows the value of one dairy cow in Iowa of $23,445. Dwarfs beef cows, dwarfs them. Because that economic activity gets spread out. We need the large animal vet. We need the feed store. We buy local because we need things right now. And this impact is not only the cow, but the milk she produces, the products made from the milk, the transportation, the veterinary care, the feed. You put all that together. Every dairy cow worth over $23,000. So when we lose 1 cow, there's a ripple effect in all of our rural communities, particularly in southwest Missouri, which has always been the heart of our dairy industry. And Joe Horner and his crew are working on a study right now, have surveyed the grade A producers in the state, and Joe will probably have a better figure on this for Missouri here in a few weeks. And we're anxious to see that interest there. When you talk about processing, we're bringing in 60% of the milk we need from other states right now. We've got the processing plants for dairy here. Now, One closed in Monette 2 years ago. A little cheese plant just closed in Iowa here this summer. If you don't have the milk production, don't have the cows, you don't have the milk production, you don't have the plants. It's that simple. Got to have the cows, got to have the production. And as we've lost production, it makes it where we're going to have to haul milk in here from New Mexico, western Kansas, Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin, wherever it's available today, maybe even Idaho. Because rather than dump milk on the ground on the West Coast, they're going to bring it to a plant where it needs milk. And that has happened. Milk from Idaho coming to Springfield or Monette. Milk knows no distance with the technology, the transportation we have. But we're all paying that cost. One way or another, we're all paying for it to bring in 60% of our milk supply from other states. So the question is, why should we allow other states to realize that economic activity? Why not spend a few dollars to help our own producers stay in business, expand if they want to, bring the next generation to the dairy? I think it's a wise investment. That's why we're hopeful that the Missouri Dairy Revitalization Act will pass in this next General Assembly, be signed by the governor, and be funded to help our dairymen realize and overcome some of the risk management that is in dairy, because we're dealing with a perishable product. It's got to move. State law says it has to be picked up every 48 hours. It's got to find a home. If we don't have a home for the milk, we're not going to be milking cows here. When I started with MDA in 1995, we were the 14th largest producing state. Today we're the 25th. Kansas has passed us as a dairy state. When you go to western Kansas, if you have the opportunity, go to western Kansas, because it's more than just feedlots, irrigated corn, irrigated hay. Now you see really good dairy facilities, poultry facilities, swine facilities, turkeys, goats. Western Kansas is now the green belt of Kansas. Northwest Iowa has opened up and seen a migration of California dairymen into northwest Iowa because there's a plant in Lamar's, Iowa. Size that we've never seen in this state that we should be receptive to. That kind of comes back to those regulations, those county health ordinances, the attitude our own neighbors and folks have about size. We've got to overcome that if we're going to expand the livestock industry, and particularly, I think, dairy in this state. You know, I had a dairyman one time say he was concerned about large dairies, and finally I drilled down on him. I said, well, how large are you concerned about? He goes, 1 cow more than I got. And he thought, this was in a board meeting, Blue, and he was sitting there, and he's talking about, I got 2 dairymen sitting at the table that were larger than he thought, more than he thought, and he's saying 1 cow more than he had. You know, you look at the average size of beef, what was that figure in your packet, 65? Something around there? That's the average size of our dairies in the state, is 65 cows. Again, we share some common concerns, common issues, Mike, that we ought to be together on, and I think we're getting closer together all the time. But when those cows leave the state, we lose that economic activity that we ought to be capturing right here when you talk about capturing value. We've got to keep the cows here. We've got to keep the milk production here so our plants stay operating at Springfield and Kansas City and Jeff City. You know, we had a plant close in St. Louis. You know, so it comes home to roost here if you don't have the dairy farms and the cows. Thanks, Mark.
Hello, my name's Jay Schutte. I farm just east of Mexico, Missouri with my 2 brothers. And just recently we have added a next generation with my niece's husband coming to our operation. We hired him away from MFA, so we've got the next generation coming on, something we're very excited about. I am a board member of the Missouri Corn Growers Association and Missouri Corn Merchandising Council. Just to echo some of your points, we have 1 dairyman on our board. We have 3 cattle producers, 1 hog producer. I feel like I was elected to my position primarily for the corn interest, but I think I'm there to represent agriculture as a whole. And that's something that we really need to stick to. People were talking about Amendment 1 earlier. about lessons that they learned. And really, it was shocking to me when I went to a social event this last summer and had friends and neighbors that have left the farm attacking me that were opposed to Amendment 1, just one generation away from farming, and they've already lost some of those core principles. So we have really got to stick together to drive home some of those points. I live in Audrain County. It's kind of the confluence of, we've got cow-calf country to the south of us, we've got corn country to the north of us. So there's always been a pocket of cattle fed there. Sad to say, though, that anymore we have a lot of what people are calling the concrete and the blue tombstones out there where feeding operations used to be that are no more. We are still in the cattle business. We did stop finishing cattle. We have gone to backgrounding now. We just felt like there was a higher potential for profit there and less risk. So we've kind of adjusted ourselves in that way. We are very heavy in supporting the ethanol industry. We're 10 miles away from the Poet biorefining plant there in Ladonia, Missouri. In our feed operations, we have incorporated distillers grains and gluten in the past. As time has gone by, and with the opening of that biorefining plant in Ladonia, we have gone to 100% wet cake. So we're actually making that plant greener by not having to dry down the distillers grains. A lot of other feeders in the area have gone to that too. We have one of the cattle producers on our board farms down in the southwest part of the state. In 2012, he was talking about the producers in his area were more worried about not being able to get distillers grains because of the drought and not so much about the high corn prices. So, you know, there's been kind of an evolution there in the mindset of some of the producers. And, you know, there was definitely a shock in the market with the oncoming of ethanol, but I think that people have adjusted and in a good way. As far as, you know, expanding opportunities, we did have one person in our area I know of that they had a feedlot that was sitting idle. When 2012 hit, and with the drought and everything else, they had a lot of corn that was zeroed out for yield. They went through, chopped silage, they overwintered cows. Saw the profit potential there, and you know, they've got the next generation coming on as well. So, you know, I think there's a lot of opportunities out there. We definitely need to get the youth involved. The average age of the farmer is, you know, definitely growing. I think it's at 56 now. But as with the dairy industry, once livestock leave the farm, for some reason they never come back. And that's a trend that we need to reverse. We need to stop that leak before we do anything else. Mr. Wheeler?
Thanks, Jay. Well, first I want to thank the governor and the director for having us. It's a great opportunity to share what the benefit is for the commodity groups to the cattle industry. But, you know, a stronger Missouri cattle industry, what's that mean for a Missouri soybean farmer? You know, beef is number 5 as a customer to us right now in the state. So naturally, we're going to welcome any kind of business if we're going to increase sales for us as a feed source. You know, many of our members, and even for the corn growers, which to me is one and the same, do have diversified operations. And most of those are cow-calf operations. So if there's going to be a lot of benefit in growth, whether it's backgrounding or other different type of operations, there's definitely going to be growth across the board by diversifying. So that's positive across the board for all of ag. You know, increase the use of soybean meal as a feedstock for cattle. You know, I want to thank Monty Curley, Dr. Curley, for his work over the past several years for what he's done for Missouri soybean and the cattle industry, and we're going to continue to do that, especially with Justin Sexton and several others. You know, last year alone, the Missouri livestock ate almost 1 million tons of soybean, but only 4.3% of that was by beef. So a huge growth potential on our behalf. And in return, it's going to help with the biodiesel industry, because if the need is there, it helps with our feedstock competition when it comes to soybean oil. So it's a huge benefit to us. So how can we support the growth of the beef industry? As the soybean farmers in the state of Missouri, they spend about 83% of their research, of their dollars through the checkoff on research and the partnerships, not only in the state of Missouri, but nationwide, especially with the U.S. Meat Export Federation and several of the others. So beyond supporting the production of high-protein soybean meal in Missouri, we're continue to invest in the research and nutritional content, digestibility of soybeans and the meal itself, and what that means for folks' operations, but also goes to cost, what they can get as a bigger bang for their buck, including ways to raise the protein content of the meal itself. But we continue to look at different varieties to impact that also. Something that we would like to hear from you guys, especially the diversified operations, is what do you guys want to see as far as meal? What do we need to be doing as far as using the checkoff dollars to invest in, not just with the University of Missouri, but with other opportunities as far as the Meat Export Federation? Something that we've got that's real exciting is going on is education, and we're just about to kick it off with the Missouri Cattlemen's and Missouri Pork. We're hiring a contractor to go out and visit with, especially in the areas that has the health ordinances. There are folks that are thinking about doing that, going in and sharing with them and educating individuals on the impact of livestock industry, the importance of, and even going back to the ones that made the decision to put health, the health effects, and made those decisions to push a lot of those entities out, and show them the economic numbers of what they lost due to their decision as commissioners to their school districts and to their towns and their counties, and show them what they've done, and to make sure we share that information with the other counties to say, okay, this is something you don't need to do. So that's something we're going to be kicking off toward the end of January that we're really excited about. Where's Brother Cope at? Brother Cope, you need to run for governor, sir. You do a fantastic job. And with that said, you brought up the point about the checkoff. And whether it's beef, whether it's soybean, corn, dairy, we need to protect the institution of the checkoff system itself. Because if we don't have it, we would not be where we're at today. Whether it's private industry, whether it doesn't matter who it is. We have to protect the sanctity of the checkoff itself. So thank you for bringing that up. And whoever doesn't support it, come and see us, whoever works for a commodity organization, and we'll show you the impact of what it's done for your operation. Moving forward, the most important thing that we can do as far as the soybean industry is stand beside you guys and make sure that you guys have the tools that you need to do what you need to do. And as far as you go in, it doesn't matter if it's going up against EPA, DNR, our friends over there, those guys continue to support us. We need to support DNR as well. Those guys continue to get hammered through, District 7. We need to support them and help them and push back. But the ultimate goal is that we have the freedom to operate and freedom to farm the way that we choose and the way that our family has done, not only historically, but run our business the way that we want to run it. So, sir?
My name is Alan Wessler, and I work for MFA Incorporated, and our company is a little over 100 years old now. Our job is to provide goods and services to our customers. I happen to think of an old Chinese proverb that said, "Blessed are the flexible, for they are never bent out of shape." And as I think about beef producers, they are some of the most flexible people I know. They're flexible in how they respond to the markets, how they respond to the situations that are put in front of them, and they know how to innovate and adapt as those things change. I'm very grateful to the University of Missouri and surrounding ag universities who supply information. Part of our effect as a cooperative is to share that information with producers in practical ways that let them look at their operations. For example, as Mike John said earlier, the ability to add weight at home through our Health Track program. Things like understanding the value of gain, understanding the value of the timed AI program that Dr. Patterson talked about, understanding what the true feed conversion rates are on their farm. And one of the things that folks have a little trouble with is they can't do that if they don't have the mechanism in place on their farms to capture that information. Bob Thompson and I were visiting in the lunch line, and we had some similar ideas, and he talked to you a little bit about the Tennessee program. You know, you think about several Missouri producers as we've talked to them, and one of the things they'll tell you, I'd love to keep animals at home longer, but I don't have any facilities, and I don't have any scales, and I don't have the ability to manage or to measure so I can manage my operation accordingly. And I think Bob's suggestion of taking a look at that Tennessee program and also as it relates to genetics is a pretty key point. One of the things that was mentioned earlier was Missouri Farmers Care, and also reference made to the anti-animal ag side of things. And if you're not a member of a commodity organization and you're not a member of Missouri Farmers Care, I would encourage you to take what?
Farm Bureau.
Farm Bureau. Thank you for that nudge. If you're not a member of one of those organizations, thank you. I encourage you to take a hard look at, because being able to tell the story of agriculture and all the good things we're doing, it's important to have a mouthpiece or several mouthpieces for doing that. And that is a situation, you know, we may not have a ballot initiative this year, we may not have an amendment. The enemy may not be in the press as much. They're not going away. They're going to be there for a while, and so we have to be alert to that and be ready for that. I think the last thing I would comment to you is if you read the national ag press, they still tell you that by the year 2050, our global population will be somewhere between 9.5 and 10 billion people. There is tremendous opportunity. There's a requirement, or not, they anticipate by that time that we will need double the meat and milk production that we have today. We are a Missouri industry. We have to think globally and react locally. And I think the opportunity for beef in particular, in light of the needs, and we talk about future generation, in light of the needs of the generations down the road, is a great opportunity. We figure out how to best participate in it.
My name is Blake Hurst. I'm with Missouri Farm Bureau. Thank you, Richard. Thank you to the governor. It's been a very, very productive day for me, very interesting day. I have to disagree with the governor on one issue. He says Kansas is afraid to play us in sports. I'm pretty sure that they're not afraid of our basketball team. It's good to see Mr. Angel here this morning. This afternoon. Mr. Angel was he doesn't know it, but his family gave me my first off-farm job, my very first day helping scoop out the sale barn in Columbia in the fall of my freshman year. They gave me this wheelbarrow, and they gave me the lot where all the cows with scours were. And I scooped up the wheelbarrow, and then you ran it down to the end of the runway in the sale barn and up a 2x10, honest to God, up a 2x10 to the top of the truck. And I noticed as I was started down the runway that everybody, these guys that had been doing this job for a few years, that they stopped what they were doing to watch me. And I got clear down to the end. I got on that slippery 2x10 with that wheelbarrow full of juicy stuff, and I dumped it on my head, and I fell down in the truck. That was so I appreciate the angels for that. I put all those clothes in my trunk, and then it got cold and it froze, and I forgot they were there. And this is a true, honest to God, true story. Very first day with my wife, Julie. It warmed up. We're driving down the road. She says, "What's that smell?" I'll never forget that either. Tarkio, where I came from, was in the state football playoffs, 11-man small school football playoffs about 20 years ago. About 5 years ago, we made the decision to go to 8-man football, and last year we had to join with a neighboring town to have enough boys to play 8-man football. That's why this is so very important. That's why I do appreciate Richard and the governor and everybody that's here today being interested in expanding our livestock industry. We cannot continue in rural Missouri the track we've been on of seeing population decline. We can't change the fact that those of us that raise corn and soybeans are consolidating. We can't change the fact. In fact, I have a very, very great fear that trend will consolidate as big data and computer-driven tractors. And if we can all sit in our office, Richard tells me he can sit in his office and see the combine monitor on his combine up at Bethany. It's a very short trip to Richard being able to drive that combine from his office here in Jeff City, and drive that combine in Bethany. That's going to mean a lot of consolidation. That's going to mean that transition from 11-man football to 8-man football is going to speed up. That is not a very good thing. The only answer we have is livestock. We've got to get behind this. We've got to move it forward. Several years ago, commercial ag group from the commercial ag department at the University of Missouri took a bunch of us up to northwest Iowa. Dave mentioned that area of the state. Cattle feeding, swine operations, dairies, it all works together. We ought to be doing it. We've got to figure out how to do it. It's pretty tough. It's pretty tough when so many of our neighbors, and believe me, our problem with acceptance of feeding facilities is not people in the small towns. It is our neighbors. It's our farmers out in the country. It's been pretty good for those of us that grow corn and soybeans. When corn's $7 and soybeans are $14, we can turn up our nose at the livestock industry. I have a feeling we're about to have some reevaluation of that as crop prices stay low. One of my favorite country songs about Lyle Levitt, the name of it is, or the lyric is, "She left me because she really wanted to." Many of us left the livestock industry because we really wanted to, but I think as these crop prices stay low, we're going to re-examine that decision. That's a very good thing for Missouri, because when you're in the livestock industry and you employ so many more people than we do in the crop industry, it's so important to our rural areas. So Farm Bureau is going to do what we can do to help the livestock industry, to promote the livestock industry, to promote this project. I have some real trepidation. I'll close real quickly. Real trepidation about getting involved in commodity businesses that are very, very competitive. You know, the beef slaughtering industry is very, very competitive, very, very low margin, with very, very big players. I'm not sure that's our future. I'm not sure that's our future. Our future is finding the niches where we can succeed, whether that be in better genetics, whether that be in different means of production. That's where our future is. That's where our chance to shine is. That's what we need to concentrate on, where those margins are just a little bit better. The economic term for the kind of economics that there are in processing is this industry sucks. And that's what we've seen. We lived through that. Alan and I did live through that in northwest Missouri when our beef plant was profitable for a while and then was no longer competitive as technology moved on. So we've been there. So it may be the place we want to go, but let's think about it very, very carefully. And finally, as we do those niches, let's be very careful. We're all in this together. So those of us that are producing in one manner need to be very, very careful about how we talk about other people who may choose to produce in a different way. We can operate we can advertise our kind of beef, our kind of pork, our kind of milk as being really good. But let's be very, very careful about criticizing the kind of beef or pork or milk our neighbor produces. And with that, I say thank you for having me today. I've enjoyed it.
All right. We're down to the last set of questions. If there's been something that's been on your mind all day long, this is a pretty good group to ask it of. Davin, I think Davin has a question.
Thank you, Davin Altoff, Missouri Beef Industry Council, and also a cow-calf beef producer and a feeder stocker. I guess my question is, and I think this is appropriate for this panel, and I'm not sure it's been discussed yet. It may have. I'm on my 10th cup of coffee, and I might have missed it on my coffee break. But my question is, we've talked a lot about individual producers finishing cattle, and whether or not there would be an interest there. During years of high corn, I'm not sure there would be. But has there been any discussion, or would there be an opportunity where we could look at the good things we do in the state from a corn producer standpoint, from a soybean producer standpoint, and also from a beef industry standpoint, for all of us to work together to look at a co-op, a feeding type of co-op, where we all could have an opportunity to invest as a co-op, where we could utilize our biodiesel plants and our ethanol plants to look at finishing cattle in that way, where we all have an opportunity to invest.
All right, Gary.
No, that's a great question. And is Senator Barnett still here? So Senator Barnett's, I think he has a great model of where he's at, and can be mimicked as easily throughout the rest of the state. Previously in my corn days, we worked really hard on doing a lot of that with distillers grains. And that could be mimicked again across the state. I'm not sure if I would go in and develop a whole business model around it. I think it would be probably behoove a group of producers, whether it be 10, 12, 15, and go in and build a commodity shed and own that within that, and do an LLC and then feed among that. It'd give you a greater opportunity to, whether buying meal from here in the state or distillers grains, you could buy at bulk. You can call up to one of the ethanol plants, and it's difficult just to get a load. It is. But it's good for the corn industry because they're sold, 4 weeks down the road. But you have to, if you're going to deal with that and grow and co-op, you have to deal with that within a business model. I know that Joe Horner and Ron Milholland, those folks, they've got some modeling from over the past 4 or 5 years that I know that they would be happy to share. But I would not go in and do a new gen co-op by no means. I think it would just a bunch of neighbors get together and put a commodity shed together. That's my opinion. I think it would probably cash flow and work better for all.
All right. Good question. Others? Yep. Mr. Thomas.
Not a question particularly, Richard Thomas, for anyone particularly, but I think Blake brought up the opportunity to get into a equipment to put with the combine, and you could monitor from afar what was going on the combine from your office. That kind of a thing is really handy to a lot of us, but we didn't make it. We bought into it, and we use it. We only need one copy. The same kind of a thing could, if prepared, as you mentioned just now, a model to make this thing go, whether it's a co-op or I think the Health Track program has been very successful for the MFA Incorporated. Perhaps a commodity group could get in to be the umbrella group to bring that about and make that cooperative effort happen, and develop some of the or answer some of the problems that could come from it: financing, facility, the type of cattle, etc., to make it work. And would need some framework to initiate that, and there'd be a lot of folks to buy into it. It seemed like the producer panel, the several people that was on that, were not really interested in getting into a feed-out kind of an operation themselves because of the magnitude of the inputs. So, if that could be encouraging to a couple of folks like the cattlemen organization to umbrella that. Thank you.
Yes, Tom.
It's more of a comment than anything else. Tom Lerner from Osage County, Missouri. I served as in the state legislature for 8 years, and we mentioned a little bit about the right to farm. Well, I guess I have the dubious honor of being one that was probably did more with that in about 6 or 7 years before it ever came to a ballot than what it did on the ballot year. We kind of wrote that on a hillside and at the home they're spreading fertilizer one day. So we've been working on that, and it was all on the same scene that we can actually have the right to farm and that we can't be taken off of our land by the legislature or by the government. And in that respect, I think today we've heard a lot of stuff talked about of what agriculture is and what about the cattle industry. And I guess the number one thing is that it's got to be profitable. And how do we know if it's profitable? We talked about the commercial feedlots. We talked about other things, that the very small or the very big. Well, we need to have an industry or some way of figuring out if we do have a group of people that want to do something. How do we know that it's going to be there? We had, in years past, we had a hog industry that we wanted to do a packing plant in Osage County. They got a bunch of tax credits and money to put that together. Well, we spent all our money on research and development and found out it wasn't feasible. Well, we have an institution that we're at right now that can do that. We have Dr. Wiegand was up here before, and if you remember, he mentioned my name. We were I was very involved in trying to get an advancement in a meat lab because of that's what agriculture is about. That's what livestock is about. If you want to do something for livestock, we're going to have to, if you want to keep the family farmer in the state of Missouri, they're going to have to, a cattleman is going to have to sell steaks instead of steers. And the pork producer is going to have to sell pork chops instead of pigs, because we have to compete with the Cargills and the Tysons and everybody else, because that's how they do it. They vertically integrate it. And everybody said in the cattle industry, well, the cattle industry will never go that way because it takes too much land. Well, I got a gentleman right behind me that's raising cows in hoop buildings. So all of a sudden, we can raise a cow in a hoop building, we can put it in downtown St. Louis. We can raise cattle anywhere. So that act that's off. So we're going to have to figure out how we're going to do this. And one of the things that we have is it going to make money in feeding heifers? Is it going to be money in feeding cows and slaughtering them and selling them down the road? One thing we want to remember here, one of the biggest assets that we have in the state of Missouri is and a food source, and we talked about educating our young people. We have the school lunch program, that how many kids eat dinner every day, and we feed them. And there's the key that goes in. If you want to start a new generation co-op, you said on all those things. What's the biggest downfall of a new generation co-op? Collecting their money. How many people sell stuff and can't collect their money? School districts pay their bills every 30 days. And if we can get into that, nobody has gone down that road. And how many different food ideas have we developed in the last few years? How many different ways have we served beef in the school lunch program? We have a food science department in the state of Missouri. University of Missouri can come up with that. That's what we pay tax dollars for. They can develop that. Look at those things that we need to look at a whole different thing outside the box if we're going to succeed in agriculture in the future of all the technology that's coming down here. And I think the key part of it is right here at the university and giving the right people the right programs, the right money and funds to do that. We have an antiquated system. You heard this morning that our butchering facility is built in 1952. And we're sitting here in the 2000s and trying to compete with that. There's the program that we can have if we have a group of people that wants to come up with an idea of feeding, they come up with these things, and we heard them when I was in the legislature. Well, we can sell pork loins to Taiwan for $10 over market. Well, that's fine. What do you do with the rest of the hog? You know, that's the part. Yeah, we can sell it, but what do we do with the rest of it? So Dr. Wiegand and his staff, they have the capabilities. They can tell you how to set up a packing plant, whether it be a multi-species packing plant. Does it need to be butchering everything from cows to hogs to lambs or whatever? Those things that can be done here, and I think before any decisions are made one way or another, I think we need to research and put the cart, or we're putting the cart before the horse. I think we need to get the horse out there and find out what's going to be feasible, and if we have a facility that can come up with those factors, that we don't have to spend a lot of money, a producer's money, trying to find out the system doesn't work. You know, there's all kinds of options out here, and I think we need to look at them, and I think we need to find out a way that we come up with an idea that we can have actual data on what it takes to feed that animal, what it takes to kill that animal, what it takes to sell that animal, and how to get rid of it. So that's just my comment. Thank you very much. It was very enjoyable to be here, and thanks for everything that the director has done and the governor's put this together. But I think we need to keep, you know, we think outside the box, but we need to make sure that we know the thing. I've seen too many of these things spend a lot of tax dollars and a lot of personal money and not make it. We have to have the information to know what we're going to do before it happens.
Thanks, Tom. And I got a quick question for Jeff right behind you. Is there an address in St. Louis I can go see that hoop building?
I think Tom's got that contact.
Okay, we'll check with Tom afterwards, and we'll take a picture of it when we get to St. Louis next time. Other questions or comments before we wrap up?